Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, we are going to talk about how the United States Constitution was created. This is important for understanding the origins of the Constitution and getting a basic understanding of what went into designing it. As I stated in my previous video, the Constitution is an important historical document that carries a lot of significance on how we operate as a country. In general, a constitution is an agreement that describes how an organization or country is governed, who makes the laws, how those decision makers are chosen, how long they serve, and what powers they have. Constitutions can be broad outlines or detailed rules about how to make laws. They can emerge through discussion or by force. Almost all countries except Britain, New Zealand, and Israel have written constitutions. So do all 50 states, Puerto Rico, most American Indian nations, and many organizations, including civic groups, clubs, and schools. Regardless of how it is developed and what it contains, a constitution is intended to help a group of people accept the leadership and reduce friction. That is the idea, at any rate. When it comes to the United States, it did not immediately start off with the Constitution we have right now. In fact, it had an entirely different government structure. Let's go over some historical context. In the Declaration of Independence, issued on July 4, 1776, the 13 United States of America pronounced themselves, I quote, free and independent states with full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do, unquote. But their independence was about the only thing these states could agree on. The states were free and independent not from Britain, but also from each other. The united part of the United States was vague and not very accurate. 13 disjointed mini-republics were strung along the Atlantic seaboard. Each state had its political system, money, and constitution. It was like each state operated as its own country. Without a king to order them around, the states had to figure out how to get along with each other and how to reach decisions everyone would abide by, even when some states objected to them. Each state sent delegates to a sort of governing body, the Confederation Congress. There, all together in one room, they tried to resolve such disputes as border lines and how much money to cough up to pay for the war they were fighting. The separate states operated under a set of rules or treaties called the Articles of Confederation and Perpetual Union. These had been decided in 1777 to carry out the war, though they did not go into effect until 1781. The articles set up a League of Friendship, as the states described their alliance. Every state was allotted one vote in this Congress, regardless of population. But the delegates often did not show up, and when they did, they spent much of their time bickering, after which they went home empty-handed and frustrated. There was a limit to what could be accomplished. One, the articles allowed few powers beyond making treaties with other countries and printing money, which turned out to be nearly worthless. Two, the national government was not allowed to tax the citizenry. It could only issue requests, called requisitions, from the states, which were often ignored. Consequently, the Treasury did not even have enough money to pay the soldiers who had won the Revolutionary War. In June 1783, 400 of those soldiers stormed Congress's headquarters in Philadelphia and locked the delegates inside. When the officials were finally released, they ran for their lives, conducting business in a series of temporary quarters in Maryland, New Jersey, and New York. In 1786, Congress tried to requisition $3.8 million, worth about $100 million today, to pay off the war debts, including the soldiers' back pay. The states forked over a measly $665. Meanwhile, states imposed their taxes on residents. These taxes were so high that many farmers lost their land and were thrown into paupers' prisons. In Massachusetts, a band of 2,000 men rebelled. Led by Daniel Shays, a former captain of the Continental Army, they executed vigilante raids on mutations depots, surrounded courthouses, and mobbed sheriffs. The Articles of Confederation called for an appointed president who served for 1 year. So America's first president under the Articles of Confederation was John Hanson. In fact, there were 8 presidents under this government system before having the fundamental shift to the Constitution, in which George Washington was the first president under that system. Still, None of the first 8 presidents in the Articles of Confederation had any real power. Both the national government and the states were in turmoil. Monumental change was needed, and quickly, if the United States were to survive as a genuine union. Otherwise, the young nation would dissolve into several separate sparring countries. To prevent such chaos, Congress called for a convention of delegates from the states to convene in Philadelphia on May 13, 1787. At first, hardly anyone showed up. Many dreaded abandoning their families, farms, and businesses to make the tiresome trip to the convention. But by May 25th, enough people had gathered in the assembly room at the State House to begin deliberations. Most were prominent men of means, meaning all 55 delegates who attended at various times were men, lawyers, doctors, or merchants. Many were young, yet no one was more important than George Washington. The delegates elected him president of the Constitutional Convention. One of the first decisions the framers made was to keep their proceedings secret. That way, they could speak and change their minds without worrying about being embarrassed in public. Congress had instructed the delegates to revise the Articles of Confederation, but they knew that much more than mere revision was needed. Working 6 days a week for just under 4 months in a stifling room behind barred doors and latched windows, they concocted an entirely new and daring kind of government. As we can see, it was incredibly difficult for the United States to operate under the Articles of Confederation, and the framers knew they needed to create a new government system that would centralize their operations. Without that centralization, there would be no United States. One of the things the framers started working on was the preamble. Let's go through this. In the preamble, it has an opening statement. It states, quote, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States of America," unquote. This statement opens the United States Constitution. It is called the preamble because it walks before the rest of the document. Even though it is the first paragraph, composing it was one of the last tasks the framers took up before signing the Constitution and going home. Actually, one framer in particular did the job, Gouverneur Morris. He said, quote, "I didn't create it from scratch. I borrowed ideas from the constitutions of several states, including my home state of Pennsylvania," unquote. Other framers had drafted a previous version a month earlier, in August 1787, but Morris wanted to make some edits. The original preamble read, quote, "We, the people of the states of New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Providence Plantations, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, and Georgia, do ordain, declare, and establish the following Constitution of the government of ourselves and our posterity," unquote. Morris kept the "we the people," but he did not think the original reflected the overarching government that the framers had created. Morris wanted to do more to bring the country's widely dispersed citizenry together under the canopy of the new Constitution. He said, quote, "Let us delete the name of individual states and insert the title of the country with a capital U and S," unquote. When the Constitution was publicly distributed at state ratifying conventions, this last-minute switch caused a fervor. Here are some statements some framers said. Quote, "North Carolina is not ready to transfer power to some large entity that doesn't even exist yet. I wish to know where they found the power of consolidating the states," unquote. Here's another statement. Quote, "Why are they so distressed? It is a matter of remaining loyal to their separate states or thinking of themselves as Americans, and they want to know who will hold more power, individual state governments or the federal government," unquote. Here's another statement. Quote, "I'm okay with the phrase, 'we the people,' though. It's a given that we are going to rule ourselves. No longer will we be ruled by a monarch who refuses to let us decide things on our own." That's unquote. And now let's go to another statement. Quote, "But wait, this doesn't quite clarify who we the people are. Free, adult, white men who own property or pay taxes?" Unquote. There were a lot of questions and opinions the framers believed in about how much power can be given to the federal government, each state, and citizens, as well as who gets to be represented in government. In 1787, neither women, Native Americans, nor enslaved persons could attend the convention or run for election to any of the new offices. That is something we need to keep in mind, but nevertheless, no other country at the time was based on self-government, which was revolutionary at the time. Once the Constitution was drafted, it was distributed to the states for discussion and approval. This process was called ratification. Let's talk more about this. The framers decided that 9 of the 13 states would have to ratify the Constitution before it could go into effect. Voters in each state would choose delegates who would attend ratification conventions to determine the Constitution's fate. Morris may have worried that the delegates might not agree to exchange the flawed but familiar Articles of Confederation for the unheard of new arrangements. Perhaps he penned the preamble to make the Constitution more appealing. The rest of the preamble describes what the framers hoped their new society would look like, the aims the Constitution was written in order to accomplish. One framer said, quote, "We have to notify the people up front that they're merging into a single, more perfect union. It's going to take some effort. People will have to start obeying laws and paying state and national taxes. They're going to have to accept an additional layer of leaders and decision makers. They will have to stretch their loyalty from one state alone to the country as a whole. Otherwise, as Thomas Jefferson said, we may always be an unimportant divided people," unquote. Another framer said, quote, "No, we're super important. What's next on the agenda? We'll establish justice by creating a system of federal courts. It will protect citizens' rights better than the existing states' courts," unquote. Under the Articles of Confederation, the country's highest courts were at the state level. Federal judges, on the other hand, would be picked by the president, confirmed by the Senate, and paid by the national government, not the states. The framers cared about some rights, and protecting property was an especially important one, but in most of the 13 states, enslaved persons were considered property. The framers disagreed about slavery. Essentially, there were a lot of things happening in the 1780s that the framers had to weigh when thinking about how to design the Constitution, especially since this was a tumultuous place to live. One, Daniel Shays and his rebellious farmers caused mayhem in western Pennsylvania. 2, New York and New Hampshire tussled over their boundaries. 3, Vermonters tried to secede from New York and New Hampshire, creating their minuscule republic. 4, slaveholders feared that their chattel, which are human beings owned as property, would band together and revolt. The framers wanted a national government, so there would be peace in the homeland. But internal strife was not the only source of hostilities during the late 1770s and 1780s. Under the Articles of Confederation, Congress did not have the authority to raise a national army to protect the inhabitants of any state. The framers knew they must provide for the common defense, beyond local militias. In general, the framers agreed that the new government should have the means to do what is necessary for the good of its citizens. They said, quote, "What exactly do we mean by the general welfare? Well, we need to shift the mindset of people from their state to the nation. When goods are sold across state lines, people say they're being imported as if they're being brought in from another country, and states can charge tariffs on those foreign products. We should probably eliminate those," unquote. When it came to liberty, the framers said, quote, "For us, liberty isn't freedom from rules. It's freedom from rules imposed by a leader who isn't chosen by the people, someone who could impose his will without consequence. Liberty is letting the people rule themselves. Liberty is self-government. That's what this Constitution is supposed to establish," unquote. This is important to keep in mind because through the amendment process, the Constitution has changed over time. So has our perception of the terms and concepts in the preamble. So, when we talk about the terms freedom and liberty, we have to look at the historical perspectives and how they apply to us right now. In conclusion, the creation of the United States Constitution was not a simple or immediate process. As we will see in this video set, it took lots of compromises and debates from the framers to decide on how the Constitution should be formed. But one thing was certain. The framers did not want to keep living under the Articles of Confederation, where the early United States went through division, economic hardship, and political chaos. These challenges pushed the framers to meet in Philadelphia in 1787, where they decided to design an entirely new system of government rather than merely revise the old one. The framers crafted a constitution that sought to unite the states under a stronger, more balanced national government. Its creation marked a turning point in world history by proving a nation can be founded on the principles of democracy, unity, and liberty rather than be ruled by a monarchy or dictator. However, as much as the Constitution is a significant improvement over the Articles of Confederation, the Constitution is not completely perfect and still presents limitations. For the rest of the video set, we will talk more about these limitations through examples and analyzing the framers' thoughts behind designing specific components of the Constitution. The next video will begin with the legislative branch by talking about bicameralism. Until then, please like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and turn on the post notifications so you will be notified when I post my next video. I appreciate your support. Remember, you are powerful, you are capable, and you are the changemaker our society needs. Thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you soon.